Welcome to day 3 of rebuilding the all-wheel drive EM1. So on the first day, 2 days ago, we pulled out the motor and the transmission out of the car. Then yesterday we went through the full sequential transmission, got all of those metal shavings out from when the transfer case exploded. Now today we get to go through the engine. So this is a complete motor from JBR, K20. So it's a 2-liter aluminum rod, sleeved, O-ringed. It's got everything. Entire fully built motor. The only other thing you could do if you wanted a beefier engine would be to do a billet block. This is not a billet block. This is a factory K20 A2 block. Cast, not billet. And today we're going to tear it down. The reason we need to tear this thing down is it has a few oil leaks. I know the timing cover's leaking. This little block off plate here is leaking. The oil pan's leaking. And more importantly, this thing was pushing coolant. Now, like I said, it is O-ringed, so it shouldn't have been pushing coolant, but it was. So we need to pop the head off, verify that the head is in great shape, not cracked or have anything weird going on there. And if all checks out, we got to replace the O-rings, which I'll show you guys here when we pull the head. And then obviously a new head gasket, get the head resurfaced, put this thing back together, get her back on the dyno, and go from there. Make sure she doesn't push coolant this time around. So let's start tearing this thing down. I'm excited, man. I've never worked on an aluminum rod motor. I'm hoping the bottom end can stay together. Obviously, JBR is a very reputable company. They know what they're doing, most certainly better than I know what I'm doing. So if we can just do cylinder head stuff, that's fine. I'm comfortable doing that. But if it comes to dealing with the bottom end, I'd be willing to do it, but I'm hoping that we don't have to do it, if that makes sense. To start, let's go ahead and pop off our exhaust manifold. Now this is a custom manifold built by a local shop here called Straight Fabrication. They did the entire turbo kit on this car. Did a very, very good job at it as well. First peek inside the motor. This is always fun. Yep, looks about as beautiful as I would expect. So these are the Drag Cartel VTEC killer cams, Drag Cartel roller rockers, Drag Cartel adjustable cam gears, some good old +1 valves with springs and retainers, of course, fully ported and polished cylinder head. Let's pop off these goodies up front. There ain't much here as far as accessories go. Water pump and alternator. That's it. I do need to do some modifications on this water pump, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that off. Now, of course, the reason for this skunk to billet timing cover being a 2-piece is so that you can pull the head without pulling the entire cover. Unfortunately, it's leaking, so the whole thing's going to come off anyway. All right, from here, we should be able to just pop the cams, pull the nuts for the head studs, and get the head off. Something like this, I'm sure you could slowly impact it off a little bit at a time, but I prefer to break them loose with a ratchet first. In a nice little crisscross pattern, starting from the outside. Whole tower is loose. All of the camshafts and rockers are removed. It seems quite a bit more simple without any of the VTEC stuff. Like I said, this does have the VTEC killer cam, so there's no VTEC on this car. Now we have access to all the nuts. These are ARP 625 plus head studs, probably torqued down to like 28 million foot-pounds. Definitely no shortage of tightness on those. Same concept as pulling those cams. Start from the outside, work your way in, and then a little crisscross pattern. I'm really curious what these things torque to. A traditional like L19 or ARP 2000 goes to like 100 foot-pounds. So we have this thing torn down to a bare short block. All of the copper O-rings look to be in great shape. There's no exhaust gases outside of the copper O-rings, which means she was not lifting the head. Head gasket looks fine. Head looks fine. I don't see anything weird going on here. I am going to, of course, drop this thing off, have it pressure checked by the machine shop, have it decked, meaning resurfaced, so it's completely flat once again. I don't know if we have a leaky seal going on, but every other intake valve, there's black in the port, as you can see. So I'm just gonna drop this thing off, have it completely gone through, and then we can get this thing back together, and hopefully she quits pushing coolant. If I'm being honest, when I owned this car, I never experienced this car pushing coolant, but Mr. Josh Bader, the one who built it, he kept having issues with it pushing coolant. I'll throw some photos on the screen. He's already gone through this and done this once. It was very, very obvious the last time he pulled the head that it was pushing coolant. But like I just showed you guys right now, there's no signs whatsoever of it lifting the head. We are gonna be going to a stainless O-ring as well instead of the copper O-ring. Stainless are supposed to be a little bit better. Both options are great. Some people prefer stainless, and that's what we're gonna do this time around. I do wanna go ahead, rotate this thing over, and take a look at all the bores. So 2 and 3 look perfect. I don't know what they set the wall clearance, or the piston to wall clearance at. But man, these things are loose compared to what I'm used to. Granted, I don't build any 8 billion horsepower motors like JBR does, but yeah, that's pretty crazy seeing the whole assembly together. Beautiful. Let's see about getting these copper O-rings out. Now, one thing, if we're gonna go to the stainless O-ring, being that it's stainless and not copper, it doesn't crush. So we need to have the proper groove depth to make sense. Proper protrusion of the O-ring. All right, first O-ring coming out. That's what it looks like. Just a good old copper piece of wire. This oil pan is certainly leaking, so we might as well pull this guy off and get it resealed. So this is a 9-quart oil pan. It's a Morso pan. Now this was also modified by Strayed Fabrication here in Spokane to go around, be clearance for an alternator, because I know from 4-piston you wouldn't be able to run an alternator. Now I know this is like a race car and all, but if you want to drive it on the street whatsoever, an alternator is definitely a must-have. I don't really see a point in tearing it down any more than this. I'm gonna leave the pump on. She only has like 2 miles on her anyway. Nice little peek at the aluminum connecting rod. Episode 3 of building or rebuilding the 1000 horsepower EM1 coming to a close. So here's the plan. Here's all we really need to do. I'm gonna drop this head off at the machine shop. They're gonna go through the whole entire thing, make sure it's good to go. We're going to a stainless O-ring instead of the copper O-ring in the block. New head gasket. The sequential transmission we went through yesterday, that thing's all fixed up, good to go. I have a brand new, fully built billet housing PPG transfer case for the car. And here the next few days, as soon as I get the head back from the machine shop, we can slap this engine back together. It should be a nice and simple build. Bottom end's perfect. We're not gonna go through the bottom end whatsoever. And then old girl's gonna go on the dyno, and I'm gonna make over 1000 horsepower. At the freaking tire. Hope you guys enjoyed episode 3. Over and out. Goodbye.